introduce one of our board members and also a member here at the UU, Renee Rochetsky.
So I'm also a park commissioner, Portage Parks commissioner. And one of the things I love about Portage Parks is that we really, okay. One thing I really love about Portage Parks is it really cares about conservation and conservation of our water supply, the watershed, the little creeks and streams that feed the river and that replenish our aquifers. And one of the things with climate change, living in Northeast Ohio, is we have lots of water. It's one of our best, most important resources. So when I heard that upriver was going to be a hyperscale data center, my stomach dropped. And I saw this group on Facebook, Portage Residents for Responsible Development, and through that contacted Jessica Winchell and just discovered this really amazing leader that just made my heart full to know that we have people in our community like Jessica who are doing the important work of not only trying to go through legal channels to have a petition on the ballot so that we can protect our really important natural resources here, but also the leadership to, sometimes you're called into leadership and you're not quite ready. And Jessica has done so with grace, and so we are so delighted to have her here this evening.
Hey y'all, thanks for coming out here tonight. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about my experience coming up from kind of no background in this area to helping to lead a movement against data centers here in Portage County, Ohio. So my talk today is called I'm Just a Little Guy, Combating Data Center Expansion at the Grassroots Level. So who is this little lady? I work for a banking and data company. I have a house in Streetsboro. What I do at my job day to day is I advise internal bank policies based on state and federal regulations. I do not have a law degree. I just have a talent for doing deep dives on incredibly boring topics and then distilling that information into something actionable. I work from home. I am very much an indoor cat. And I am not somebody who has a big activism background. I do have like some volunteer and service experience, but that's it. I'm not a community organizer. I've lived in Portage County all my life though. I did grow up on a dairy farm in Garrettsville, and like I said, I now work from home and own my own home in Streetsboro. So I'm just a little guy. And I am up against some really big boys. So as you probably know, the richest companies in America are primarily technology companies. And money buys influence in the United States. For example, in 2025, Meta is estimated to have spent over $26 million on lobbyists. So those are the folks that go to lawmakers and say, hey, you should have this policy or you shouldn't have this regulation. And whatever Meta wants, they translate to lawmakers. So the Data Center Coalition is one of these lobbying companies. Their whole purpose is to lobby on behalf of data centers. They offer a pay-to-play membership package. The more your company spends, the more seats you win at the policy-making table. And they recently spent $10,000 on Ohio Facebook advertising of the pro-data center agenda. So they are active in our area. As we zoom in a little bit more, I come to Bitdeer, and Bitdeer is the company that is proposing the data center site in Shalersville, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But Bitdeer itself boasts that it is one of the largest crypto miners in the world, with a US market cap of over $3.3 billion. They also claim to have invested over $300 million already in their Massillon site, which is about 1/6 the size of the site that they are proposing in Shalersville. So they are indeed a very big boy, and have the resources that far outstrip what any of us in this room, even if we pulled all our resources together, I'm sure would come nowhere near to what they have. So if we zoom out a little bit, Bitdeer has proposed a 750 megawatt facility in Shalersville on the Geist property by the Turnpike. This power consumption alone is greater than all residences in the county combined. The facility will be used to mine cryptocurrency, which will enrich a foreign billionaire, as well as provide computing power to third parties that are as yet neither confirmed or identified. So what this really means is that the computer servers held in all of those buildings, we don't know who's going to be using them or what their end-use purpose will be. It could be government contracts, it could be pornography, we don't know, and we have no transparency into that. Data centers in general are believed to generate sound and water pollution that may be harmful to nearby animals and people and are associated with poor job generation. I just saw an article get published yesterday about a data center that uses a similar closed-loop pipeline technology as that proposed in the Shalersville site. They flushed some water that contained some sort of a resistant bacterium into the local water supply, and that has been a real mess. So, I mean, that's just one of the many risks that these businesses and these structures present to the surrounding community. So, where I came into all of this. Back in April, the very beginning of April, there was an organization down in Columbus called Ohio Residents for Responsible Development. They later rebranded to Conserve Ohio, so if you hear either of those names, it's actually the same group. Ohio Residents for Responsible Development had drafted an amendment for the Ohio Constitution that effectively bans data centers over 25 megawatts in power draw. So again, as a sense of scale, the Shalersville site is proposed to have 750 megawatts of power, far over the limit proposed in the amendment verbiage. So they went ahead and they got this amendment verbiage approved by the Ohio ballot board to go to the petitioning phase, and that I think was on April 3rd. And they put out a call on TikTok asking for help from all 88 counties to have volunteers step up and say, I can help coordinate petitioning and get the word out in my county. And I thought this would be a great little fun side project for a couple of months. So I went ahead and volunteered. And within a week, my partner Sam and I had launched our own Facebook group, Portage Residents for Responsible Development, and had started disseminating petition circulator training, getting volunteers on board, and distributing information locally. So on day one, we had 2 followers there in April. In May, we had been organically growing. We grew to about 500 followers during the month of May, and we were generating a slow but steady trickle of petitioner activity. And at this time, my main concern was still just acting as an interpreter of information, mostly of the amendment verbiage, and coordinating volunteers, getting them educated, and speaking to local folks, elevating awareness of what this issue was. In late May, The news of the Shalersville site proposal did break, and that really kind of changed things for us. Again, my partner and I were able to come across some information. We were the first people to publish Bitdeer's involvement in the site, as well as a few other details that we were able to come up with, which I will talk about later. And that same week that we published that information, I was approached to help plan and lead a protest at the Geist site during the day of the Q&A, which you may have participated in, you may have seen covered in the news. So I went from someone who I have gone to a protest or two, but I had never anticipated helping to plan or organize one, but that's where we found ourselves. So that was about 2 months in. Obviously, with the protests and the local news coverage, we started to grow very quickly after that. So in June, we were up to about 1,200 followers, and really at that time, the group was serving 2 functions, including organizing ongoing petition efforts, but also really doing a lot of content investigation and aggregating information about local politicians as well, and publishing as much relevant information as we could about data centers in Portage County. Today, we are about 2,600 members strong. We have a really strong, mature set of experienced volunteers who are extremely knowledgeable on these topics and really bring a variety of skills to the table. And that has been really incredible to meet these folks and grow with these folks. We've also collected about 3,000 signatures just within Portage County alone for the statewide petition. The total count for that petition right now is, I believe, about 102,000 total statewide. And so we are about 25% of where we need to be. We have a year to get the remaining 350,000 signatures. So we are on track to be on the ballot for next November. At this time, we also have several members who, including myself, who are on the Citizens Advisory Board for the Shalersville trustees to try to inform their policy making specific to the Shalersville data center site. So one of the things that I really want to talk about today is, and I really want to demonstrate, is that when a lot of little voices join together, they can become very, very big. And the visual that I keep coming back to on this topic is one droplet of water collecting with other droplets of water, and eventually you end up with an ocean. And despite the fact that we have very big tech boys out there standing up against us, if we all come together, our voices really do matter, and we can make very, very real change. So just a handful of headlines that I've come up with just very recently. A rural community steps up to stop data centers. The vote that stopped a data center. How we rallied a big coalition to stop a shady data center bill. In just 3 months, data center backlash stalls $130 billion in projects across the country. So we can do this, we are doing this. If you stand up and help and stand with a group, you can do this. So a little bit of what I want to talk about now is Some lessons that I've learned having gone on this journey that I was not intending to go on. And you know, these lessons don't entirely pertain to data centers, but certainly I hope today everybody can leave kind of feeling like they can apply this to the data center fight or any other good fights that they take on in the future. So I want to talk about how can you amplify your voice. I've got four lessons that I've learned. The first is to be transparent and direct. I've learned not to tell people what they should believe. Tell people what you believe and why you believe it. People are going to form their own opinions no matter what you say, but if they understand what inspires you, that will typically go farther in inspiring them than picking apart the errors in their thinking. And I think that's something that has just been so critical with the data center issues in particular is a lack of transparency, and we consistently see suspicion not only of these big tech companies, but of people in politician and leadership roles and their relationships with these companies. And so what has been a core value of mine from day one is being extremely transparent, radically transparent. Where are we getting information from? Why do we believe what we believe? Why are we taking the steps that we're taking? And making sure that people have that information. The second lesson that I've learned is to ask for help, clearly and often. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I struggle when things are not done perfectly exactly as I'd like. But one thing that is definitely always true is that a project that is finished is always better than a project that is stalled. So ask for help clearly and often. Additionally, the more tasks that you delegate, the more your team learns and develops, and the more you learn about your team, and the overall group efficiency increases. I found that 10 experienced volunteers are typically way more impactful than 100 inexperienced volunteers. So the folks that are taking on tasks when I ask for help, I need help with this, I need help with that, can someone cover this? Those folks are upskilling as they're doing that, and the next time they help again, they're helping that much better, that much more. So the group is really successful because of the people who step up to help over and over and over again, and continue to learn and grow and prioritize that growth. The third lesson, how can you amplify your voice? You absolutely have to use all of the tools at your disposal. Again, we're kind of in an unfair fight. I'm standing up against companies that have billions and billions of dollars. So when I say use all of the tools at your disposal, I mean, yes, AI and social media, and I know that's controversial and a question that has been really come up a lot in various forms is, isn't using the tools of your enemy unethical? I don't think so. I think the answer to that question is no. The reason being, a tool or technology in and of itself has no moral standing. It's morally neutral. How that tool or technology is used or what it is used for is what makes it good or bad. To illustrate that, I have a meme that I saw that I think sums it up pretty well. It says, it's okay to resist capitalism on an iPhone. The feudal lord who owns the pitchforks the peasants killed him with probably observed the irony too. So we have those tools. We have the tools of AI and social media, and we're going to use them to fight the good fight. And to make judicious decisions. So I'm going to take a little detour now to talk a little bit how we did use AI at one point, and it did augment our movement. So in late May, when that data center proposal was first announced, a website was published, and at that time, and the website was Any Ohio Project Info, and at that time it was basically just one page, and it didn't have any information about the companies involved in the Shalersville site or anything like that. It was very stark and very minimal. So my partner and I were poking around in the site's code and looking at the domain and seeing if we could figure out who paid for the domain, and we found that the website was generated using a service called Wix, and Wix is an AI website generator. They also offer AI site cloning, so at the time we thought it would be really funny to make a replica satirical site. And so we went to Wix, and for the low price of $200, we were able to buy all the code. Which, again, to remind you, as you're fighting the good fight, remember that there is absolutely no loyalty under capitalism. There's no integrity. These guys are not all friends. They will turn on each other for $1. So do not hesitate to use that to your advantage either. So we went ahead, we bought all the code, and it immediately became apparent to us once we had that in hand that there were several hidden pages, and the pages were actually published online. There were just no links to them. So there were other ways to find this out that we just weren't smart enough to do at the time. So we used AI. And it turns out, that's how we found out that the buyer of the site was BitDeer, and just a note to me using the term buyer, the site has not been bought yet. But the potential buyer was BitDeer. We were able to get a few additional details about their plans through that methodology, and again, we were the first people to publish all of that information. So that is really what set us at, I think, the forefront of people's minds for information on the issue, which was really critical to our growth, but also I think it really prepared us for that Shalersville Q&A, that first session, to come locked and loaded with really good, challenging questions that we couldn't have come up with just that bare bones initial site that had very little information. So it really helped us hit the ground running. So again, you should use all of the tools at your disposal. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying you should use AI for every little thing. You probably have a volunteer on your team who can do artistic things or creative things. Like, use people as much as possible. But as little guys, we just do not have the luxury to turn up our noses to fill in gaps with AI when we have to do that. The final point, the final lesson that I learned during this process is to beware the tone police. The tone police are people who will critique or attack how you communicate your message rather than respond to the content of your message. I have found that these sorts of arguments absolutely derail helpful conversations, and ultimately they always boil down to speak a little quieter, be a little nicer. And I think as a woman standing here leading a movement in a meeting for the League of Women Voters, a lot of other women have probably heard phrases like that in their personal and professional lives. So I have some examples of some of the things that have been said to me, and I'm not saying that you should not introspect when you get critique, but you need to watch who is telling me that and what is their goal. And to the men in the room, if you are standing next to a female leader in the workplace or something like this, politically, and you hear someone tone policing her, please speak up. Say, I don't think that was out of line of her, or let her know, later on, one-on-one, that she was not being out of line, because this has been so crystal clear to me with my partner being a man, and a lot of this discourse occurring online. He and I can have almost the exact same comment or post, and the reactions to it can be completely differently. Sometimes it's the same responder responding to both of us. So I have learned when I'm hearing a lot of these things coming from one person, they're out of here. They're not worth listening to. They're not adding to the movement. So just be aware of the people who will try to derail you by telling you to make your voice smaller. Take up space. We're already little guys. Take up space. Thank you. So just to recap again, the lessons that I've learned, how can you amplify your voice, be transparent and direct, ask for help, use all of the tools that are available to you, and beware the tone police. If you're interested in helping us specifically in Portage County to fight against data centers, we do have a website, www.conserveohio.com is the state level website for our petition. It has information for how to get started volunteering, petitioning. It has the full text of the petition if you're curious about the details. It also has the daily updates of how many signatures we have. Again, being as transparent as we can be. My Facebook group is called Portage Residents for Responsible Development. We are constantly trading articles about all things data center related and especially anything at the local level. I would also very much encourage everyone here to absolutely make sure, go home and check, send an email, find out if your township or village has zoning laws in place to prevent data center expansion. Most of Portage County is getting these in place right now, but there are a few places I know that still have nothing on the books. So you need to let your elected officials know that this is important to you and we want to put a break on big data. So thank you guys so much for listening to me today.
Okay, so we are going to open up for questions. Now, a question ends in a question mark, right? It's not a comment. We all have our big feelings in here, and so this is not a time to prophesize about what you feel about data centers. We all kind of know. But we will open it up to questions at this time, and I will come around and bring the microphone so you can hear the questions.
Thank you. Do you know how many data centers there are already in Ohio, and why do they need more except for the gold rush mentality?
Over 200 in Ohio so far, and as far as and by 200 I'm speaking to like hyperscaler size. And as for why we need more, I would say gold rush mentality is probably the best way to put it. It really is for the AI boom and for the surveillance boom that is happening. I mean, that's the primary driver for these data centers.
Hi, do you have any specific data or engineering analysis on the effect on water tables from these sites?
So I don't have those reports in hand, but in general, there's a lot of variability because there's different types of tech that are currently in use. So there's open loop, closed loop, zero water. There's a lot of different varieties, and there's also differences in what additives are used in the cooling system water. So that becomes a very nuanced question that really has to, you almost have to go to the exact site to get an answer.
Sorry,
Okay.
what about the Shalersville one specifically? The closed loop, like, can you speak to that?
So Shalersville, they are claiming that they are going to use a closed loop. They are claiming that they are only putting glycol in the water, and that water will be trucked on site and then trucked off site when they are done with it. Again, the issue that with that, there's a lot of issues, but to the point I made earlier about the data center using the closed loop system that did do a system rinse and dumped the water and released a pathogen into the water table. I mean, there's still issues to be seen with how all that works.
What is the timeline of the Shalersville project? And second, I'm from Aurora, Ohio, Mark Deming, and the second question is, what agencies have to approve it before it can even get started?
I don't know the agencies piece of it. I mean, obviously EPA plays a role. Obviously, there's going to be hopefully some new policies in place by the trustees. As far as timeline, the current Shalersville moratorium is up on November 1st. They are possibly going to seek an extension on that. I don't know if that's for sure yet. I know they haven't voted to do that yet. And as far as the timeline after that, assuming the moratorium ends on November 1st, I guarantee you Bitdeer and Geis would want to break ground on November 2nd. And they have said the build out, they're estimating it to take 5 years, which I think is probably optimistic because both their Massillon and Nile sites fell way behind schedule. So it would probably be more than that for the full build out if it starts, which we're not so sure it's going to start yet. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you know if they're offering Shalersville any financial incentives to, donate to money to the school system or municipality in any way, like a bribe?
So, if somebody's being bribed, nobody has told me, which I know is wild, but no. So, as far as I know, the way Bitdeer is pushing it is through the property tax, and saying that it's X number of millions of dollars are going to be made by the area as a result of the property tax. My concerns with that are twofold. One is, Ohio is trying to move away from property tax. That's been a topic for a while, so that there's some concern over that. But also, the figure that they're pitching, as far as what they would be paying in property taxes. We asked them how they arrived at that figure because you need a property valuation first of all and some other stuff. They weren't able to tell us how they got to that figure, and this is really weird, it's not a joke, this is truly what they told us. They weren't able to tell us that figure because the guy that came up with it is dead now.
When you say they, is it Bitdeer or who is it that you're talking to?
Bitdeer and Geis representatives. Geis is the proposed seller and Bitdeer is proposed buyer.
Are they responsive?
I mean, do they always have something to say? Yes. I mean, they're obsessed with me. They're always checking my LinkedIn profile and my TikTok and everything. But so they're responsive in that regard. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was in the room with us right now. Maybe I'm getting paranoid, but they're interested in this discourse. I'll put it that way.
Can you give a little bit more detail about what is unique about the government support in Shalersville in resisting the data center project versus other municipalities that
Yeah.
have that environment?
So, I did make a little mention of it before. I am currently on their citizen advisory board. So what they did was they put together a group of concerned citizens who are interested in looking at policy options to effectively deter this data center from being developed. So they are actively seeking help from the community. They are very interested in trying to come up with a solution. My experience with them has been that they've been very earnest. They've been very willing to share the documentation that they do have. And they've been very willing to listen to our ideas, our brainstorming ideas, and they are actively taking input from us. So,
They being whom?
they being the Shalersville trustees.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is my question. Job-wise, I've heard a lot of things, and a lot of them, what I've read is that they said, there's gonna, a lot of jobs, but isn't it true that the jobs are just the building jobs? And again, then afterwards, you might be down to 50, 30 people, and maybe in 5 years, it'd be robots running these places and not jobs for people. Is that true?
That's been accurate from what I've seen. So most of the jobs are upfront temporary building jobs. I heard someone say recently that every single data center proposal website says that they're going to have 200 permanent jobs, and I checked that, and it seems to be true. So they seem to just have this number that they throw out there, but the jobs that they really bring at the end of the day are a lot of just a handful of sort of janitor, security guy jobs, whatever they need to actually babysit the servers. And any higher level jobs are frequently remote jobs, because if you're working with AI and data and stuff, you don't have to physically be in the building to do that. So jobs are typically very, very, very lean, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question in regards to the power drain. Have they addressed how they plan on helping or adding or building, whether it be solar or wind, or adding to the power grid in any capacity, or is it just going to be a drain on Portage County residents?
So the power, they aren't going to do solar. They've just flat out said they aren't exploring solar. So take that as you will. What they will have on site are these extra large diesel generators, and those are going to be for backup power, which they'll still need to run periodically for testing. And so there have been 2 states now where the data centers have been given the green light to just run those diesel generators 24/7, Virginia and New York. Those are both on the PJM grid, which is what we're on. And so that has been in response to heat waves already this summer. So I would say it's a very real possibility that if this structure was built, we could anticipate in the summer that they would be generating 750 megawatts of power with diesel.
Is our state government mostly for these data centers?
I would say mostly 4 probably would be a fair assessment. Certainly our governor is very pro data center. Yeah.
So who is the defense lawyer team for the township trustees? Is it the prosecuting attorney's office for Portage County, and is that adequate?
It is primarily the prosecutor's office. I wouldn't be able to speak to if that's adequate. I can also say that the Shalersville trustees have secured outside counsel as well, though. And those folks are also partnering to some extent with the Citizens Advisory Board, again, looking for defensible ways to deter the upcoming development.
Hi, thank you for coming. I was interested, is there an average amount of acreage that they're asking for these places in Ohio? Because I heard that Van Wert, Ohio is looking at a facility that would be 1,500 acres.
I don't know about average number of acres. I have heard of places like out in Utah, for instance, that are thousands and thousands of acres. I mean, they're measured in square miles at that point. So they can get quite large. I think it really just depends on, you know, the internal business workings, company to company, site to site, what they think will work best for their bottom line.
I don't know if this is within your range of activities thus far, but has there been any pushback or promotion coming from the building trades, trying to go, you know, would certainly have an interest in even short-term jobs?
A little bit. So, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, there was another town hall Q&A with Bitdeer Geis, the Shalersville trustees, that was open to the public, and there were some union builder guys that did show up for part of that, to, I guess, stand in, I don't know, to me it felt a little bit like it was meant to be an intimidation tactic. They all came in, you know, big surly guys and crossed their arms and pro data center. It was kind of weird, but so yes, there is some of that, but to that particular incident, the guy who led that group has since walked back his support of the data center quite a bit. And so I think that there's a little bit of pro data center on the trade side for that reason, but I think it's still a relatively unpopular opinion to have.
Has the city of Akron chimed in on this, since they're basically a quarter mile from the Cuyahoga River, which is Akron's water supply?
Not that I'm aware of, no. People have reached out to them, but I am not aware of at this time anybody from the city of Akron who has stepped up to take any sort of a strong stance on it.
I'm gonna be nice, so you said some things, but the air quality and the water and the noise concerns me, because I live in an area that they're talking about, and it's in Ravenna, but I live in Ravenna Township. I live right around the corner from where they're talking about building. And where can we get more information? Because I've been reading a lot of things of data centers out west, and the noise and the water pollution. How can we get even more information about Ohio? Thank you.
So I would say, outside of your favorite news outlet, whatever that already would be to exist, you know, on our group on Facebook, Portage Residents for Responsible Development, we are constantly sharing articles. You know, our group is 2,500 strong, so there's a lot of information on there. I can't speak to the quality of every single post that we have, but we try to moderate it to keep it pretty cleaned up and reasonable and accurate, and certainly anything that we have vetted and we believe is a really quality source of information that stands up to critique, we save to our featured page so that people can refer back to that, or more often than not, we refer back to that when we're trying to look into policy issues.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if you could summarize the reasons why people would be for a data center, just kind of
So I definitely think the primary reason is for money. People who are invested heavily in the tech sector or in certain parts of the building sector stand to make a lot of money from these. These are, as far as like the people, I mean, I think what we're seeing is that for the most part, most people don't see an upside for them. The people that have approached me who are just regular guys that say, oh, I like data centers, are the people who already work there. And they're afraid they're gonna lose their job if, the petition passes, which they wouldn't, because the petition just bans new construction. But those are the only folks that have ever really approached me and said, I am really strongly for this. The other group, I guess, would be, like I said, the union builder guys that we saw a couple of weeks ago, which, like I said, they've kind of walked that back since then. So it's vastly a negative view for average little guys like us.
I realize that your point is preventative, but just like after COVID started and they built all these warehouses which are now empty and they want to be detention centers, and that's not really working out well. When half of these companies go bankrupt and leave contaminated brownfields, is there any planning for that eventuality?
So I agree, that's one of my concerns with this construction boom. Every time we've seen a big construction boom in the past, it leaves a lot of abandoned buildings. So to answer your question, I guess one of the strategies would be if the township could not stop the Bitdeer data center from being built, one of the strategies that we would look at doing is requesting that they pay up front for cleanup services, like have a fund set aside up front. Those are some policy options. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying that is an option that other communities have attempted to go after. So really things like that to try to get that money set aside up front, or to get that commitment set aside up front somehow as sort of almost an insurance policy.
Thank you.
I have two questions. So one, I know there's the Shalersville Township and Ray Harner's land on State Route 14 where there's proposed data centers. I'm trying to move to the area, so I don't want to move next to a data center. I heard there was identified land along Lake Street and in Ravenna Township owned land that was identified, but I can't find what land that is. Do we know what land was identified for potential?
I don't know that property off the top of my head. I know that Ravenna has passed a moratorium, and I would describe the Ravenna Council as hostile towards the idea of new data center development. I don't know exactly the nature of what policies. I'm not sitting in on those meetings, so I'm not up to date with what they're doing. But I would describe them as generally not interested in encouraging data center growth.
My other question was, is there any way to force an in-depth environmental study to buy us extra years before these data centers come to pass?
There's probably a way to force it. I think the question would be, how would we fund it? I mean, that's an issue that my group has come up with quite a bit, is that we are completely locally funded. You may have heard rumors out there that the anti-data center movement is funded by Chinese billionaires or co-solis or whatever. My check got lost in the mail. So we, even at the state level, the Conserve Ohio organization that covers the entire state for the amendment, I think they do have a donations page. I think total, their whole budget so far for this project has been under $5,000 for the whole state.
My memory gets less and less as we get more and more gray, but I remembered a Signal article from February 26th that might be helpful to some of you. Signal's a news group that operates out of Akron and Cleveland, but the Signal in Akron's been covering data centers. There's 7 data centers in Akron. And it tells what they are, how there's differences among different kinds of data centers. And you can probably pick out from there what is ours and what's a small data center. There are a variety of names, and they've been covering it with maps and what have you. So it's February 19th, I said. See how fast it goes through my mind? But I looked it up and it is back there. So take a look at Signal. It's a good source of news. It's accurate and true, but they have some of the same issues that we do. And some of the state rep candidates and state senate candidates, well, at your district.
Excuse me. Okay. Great, I can pass that down.
Two questions. Is Ohio so desirable just for the water? And the other one, could the legislature, the Ohio legislature, try to restrict any of this stuff so municipalities couldn't?
So to answer your first question, Ohio is attractive in part due to the water and climate, but I think it's mostly attractive due to the fact that a lot of townships are kind of hamstrung with zoning. So that's the problem that we come up with Shalersville. Like, townships are limited as to the types of laws they can enact, when they can enact them, how far-reaching things are. So frankly, I believe that the reason a lot of these data centers are coming to Ohio is because they know that they're not going to have as much of a legal battle to get their building underway. They also have partnered quite a bit with Team NEO, which is a government agency that is a part of like the Ohio jobs. I'm not sure how they're all interconnected, but they're all like BFFs with each other and hang out on the weekends, I think. But like, so it's a very welcoming environment for them politically. Whether the local governments and local people feel that way, the overall structure that is our state government and climate for making laws right now is very conducive to them. As for state legislature, yes, the state lawmakers have a wealth of things they could do. A wealth of things they could do. And they know that. At this point, you know, when they've tried to pass things, it has failed. So a few people are trying to get things through the state legislature, but if they're not passing, if state lawmakers are voting against them, if the governor is vetoing them.
Could they restrict your activities?
Probably.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, the only reason I thought I had heard this thing about that one time. They could have something else.
I don't think she can be quiet.
Jessica. Jenny Adams, hello. I wanted to mention to everybody in the room that one of our Portage County commissioners did make the comment that the federal government very much supports data centers. What I'd like to do is remind you that this November, your vote is very important if you feel strongly about data centers. I will also tell you that we have Mike Roberto, who's running for state senate in the room. And we have Jeff Clapper as well. I would suggest that you speak with these folks. We also have Maria. She is running on the federal level. And I know that these folks government feels right now, they are being urged by our federal government to support the entry of the data centers. And I'm Jenny Adams, and I'm running for Portage County Commissioner.
How do I follow that? I'm curious, are there up-to-date maps that show locations of data centers in Ohio and their status?
Yes, and I'm gonna have a hard time thinking. I know Erin Brockovich on her website, she has a map of both proposed sites and active sites. I know there's other maps as well, but I cannot think of them offhand. But yes, those resources are absolutely out there for sure.
I was just wondering if you could speak to how the size of a data center was chosen for the petition.
Yeah, so the amendment that we're petitioning for has a cutoff of 25 megawatts, and a lot of folks have the question, like, why even have a cutoff at all? We just want no data centers. So we can't really exist without any data centers, because ultimately a data center is a room with a lot of computers in it. So we need data centers to run your doctor's office. We need data centers to run your school. We need data centers to run your bank. All of these buildings already have server rooms that would qualify as a data center. The difference here is that, one, these tiny data centers benefit us directly. I mean, we need the banks to run. We need our doctor's office to have access to our files. Those have a very clear positive impact on our day-to-day lives. And they're small. Their effects are relatively minimal. So they went ahead and they put a cutoff at 25 megawatts. I think they really came up with a value, kind of looking at things like office buildings and things like that nature. Again, this is a statewide blanket ban, so you have to imagine properties that might exist in Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. There are some bigger properties out there, so they were trying to preserve the day-to-day Main Street functionality of these sort of smaller data centers that already exist in our day-to-day businesses, while still knocking out these hyperscale structures that just have nothing to do with our day-to-day lives. So again, looking at the Shalersville site for cryptocurrency mining and AI to the highest bidder, that's not something that we need to live our day-to-day lives.
Do you know why they don't want to implement solar energy instead of using diesel, or at least 50% solar and the rest diesel?
I really don't. I could guess at a few reasons, but they would just be guesses. I know that there's some limitations on solar use locally. I also know that diesel is somewhat of a, from their point of view, is going to be somewhat of a more reliable and space-wise more energy production per square foot than solar. So those would be my guesses, but those would just be guesses.
Hey Jessica, we might have an answer back there.
So one of the reasons why solar is usually disqualified as a feasible power production source is because at the megawatt that these data centers operate at, they are on par, if not bigger, than a steel mill. And you would need 10,000 to 15,000 acres of solar panels. And so if you're in this room because you care about rural Ohio farmland, it's more about what else can they do to not use that much power, and what can we do to force first energy to improve our grid so we can all live regular lives.
Shalersville also has a ban on wind and solar.
Really?
Yep, I go with one more question, and I am sure that Jessica and our candidates would entertain any questions that you might have after this.
I don't know that much, I'm only 17, so I'm just wondering, I do know that most data centers are predominantly in marginalized communities or people that are low income. Is it the same in Ohio, because I know someone mentioned Akron had 7, is it the same, are they targeting people of color normally or low marginalized communities? I know it's also farmland, but do you know anything about that?
I would say it would be accurate to characterize that they are looking for areas that are economically depressed, which, yes, to your point, obviously coincides with a lot of communities of color. So definitely marginalized communities are more likely to be negatively impacted like these, as we've consistently seen throughout, environmental history with, different power plants and Superfund sites and everything always tend to be shoved off into the poorer communities. So yeah, in a word, yes.
All right, thank you all very much. Let's give them